Councilman Teal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since gaining office in April, one thing has come up again and again, and I'd like to bring it up in my council comments this evening, and it pertains to how we select our mayor here in Castle Rock. Obviously, we run our town government much like a business here in America. And the board of directors or town council, we select our mayor, just as we did in April. But again and again, I'm getting approached by members of my constituency who talk about doing something a little different, having an at-large selection for mayor. And so this evening, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to direct staff to create a presentation in 2015 for the purpose of reviewing options available to council related to changing the town charter and allowing an at-large vote for the office of mayor of Castle Rock, Colorado.
I'll second that. That was a motion.
Okay.
I think it'd be worthwhile to look into.
Indeed, it's worthwhile to have the discussion. And perhaps we don't proceed further, but I think it makes for certainly worthy of discussion.
Okay. We do have a motion with a second. Do we have any discussion on that, Councilman Valentine?
Personally, I don't think it's something that we need to bring up right now. I think we've got so many other things that we're working on. I feel very comfortable with the way everyone is represented here, especially with our districts. And I think how we elect the mayor, really, he has the same amount of voting power as the rest of us. So, and personally, I like how we choose it because we know these people, we know their ethics, we know their character, and we know who's going to be best to lead our meetings. So I personally don't want to go there right now.
Okay. Any other comments?
Do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. I really respect the comments by my colleague Renee here. I mean, and it's very much like when we spoke about this earlier in the week. It's so hard to. I think we're finding it very difficult to separate the personalities from the mechanics of the office, the mechanics of how we would govern ourselves. Just due to the fact that, I voted for Paul. And Paul, that's not a vote that I regret to this day. I'd do it again, and I have opinions on who I would like to be our next mayor, which I'm happy to share at another time. But the point is that, we are a growing town. We're moving beyond I think I heard maybe as small as 10,000 people that we were when we adopted this form of government in our charter originally. We're 5 times that size. We're on, we're on a glide path to be 10 times that size in the next 16 years. And I'm sure, maybe I'm giving away my age here, but heck, I remember 16 years ago who was president. I remember who was governor of Colorado. 16 years will be upon us before we know it. So, I encourage us to move forward with this, to send this to staff, to give us options. And I got to say, at this stage of the game, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm in love with the idea of necessarily changing our districts, necessarily changing the roles of even a mayor elected through an at-large process. I'd almost rather, I don't want to be the smart guy in that room. I'd rather we put it out there, we assign a commission, we solicit public input, and we see what the people of Castle Rock want to do.
Councilman Ford?
Yeah, Mayor. Hearing this for the first time tonight, I have less than zero interest in exploring this option. And I think it has to do primarily with 2 things. One of them is that I think we've got a lot of pressing issues. I think we've got a lot of other things that are more important than our current form of government. And the second part of it is, I think if you go back, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I do like the fact that the way that we are set up, that one person doesn't dictate anything. If you want to do something, you have to get 3 other council members to see the same thing your way. I think when I look at national politics, I think when you look at, whether it's state government or federal government, I like checks and balances in the system. And I don't want it to go any further away from the checks and balances that I feel are already established in our system. And, You know, if I had people who, and I have had people who ask me as constituents in my district how it works, you know, why don't we vote for the mayor? Once I explain it to them, I've never had them come back and say, well, I want to change it. That sounds ridiculous. I think that once they understand the way that our form of government works, they understand it. So my opinion on it is I have zero interest in pursuing this as an option.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Green?
A few comments after hearing everyone's speak a little bit. I am not in favor of changing it. If we change how the mayor is elected, that changes the makeup of a council. The charter says we have 7 members. If we have a mayor and 6 council members, well, then we have one district that's not being represented, which would mean we would need to alter the charter to include another, potentially 2 more individuals to have an odd number. Mayor would have the power of veto. Mayor would have the power of override. I think that's too much power for any elected official to have. I think this is a more Republican form of government. I do not like that one person could control or dictate everything that happens. I think when we have an issue like that, there's no purpose of having a council. So I'm not in favor of changing this. I know for federal level and state level, we have the elected officials elect their representation for Speaker of the House. Senate Majority Leader, that does not go back to the public once people are elected to then elect Speaker of the House or Majority Leader. So I think this is a better representation of how we in Castle Rock represent our districts. And again, my concern having a mayor in this form is too much power and too much control.
Councilmember Heath?
I kind of look at it in that same vein, but I was thinking more of if we're going to actually go back and change the charter and redistrict and things of that nature, I think we should probably get more of a committee together and look at the charter as a whole. I mean, our charter was written quite some time ago, and as we found out earlier this year, you know, technology's changed. There's different things out there. We may want to take a look at the charter as a whole and not just one individual piece. Maybe get a committee together. And obviously, that's a huge task to take on. It would take years, you know, 2 or 3 years of looking at each and every charter chapter and seeing if it is up to date, up to speed. But I would look at it as more of a committee type situation than just one item in our charter. That'd be kind of the way I'd look at that.
Yeah. Chip? Anything? Nope.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just to address something that was brought up by the Mayor Pro Tem. I mean, I think you've brought up a couple of really great ideas, Jen. It's, you know, we would not want to place too much power in the seat of a mayor here in Castle Rock, regardless of whether it's an at-large vote or it's in the process of how we select a mayor now. We probably don't want to go down that route. I just ask, and granted, I apologize, I did not provide copies of my motion to everyone else on the town council. But again, I'm not really leaning forward to try to give us those implied changes of power to the mayor at this stage. This is really just directing staff to come back at us with options. And I would, if I was a member of staff, if I was our town manager, I would take your comments very clearly to not have a veto power for the mayor, to not have some of those overriding powers that you mentioned. Sounds to me like we don't want it. But I think it just keeps coming up for me. And, you know, Brett, you mentioned it keeps coming up for you, and I'm much the same way. A lot of the times I play the team player, and I explain how we select our mayor, and folks walk away and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they don't come back later. But folks keep coming up. It's something that keeps coming up over and over again. So, I mean, I think the time is right. I think the time is right for a discussion bigger than what we have here. And, you know, I would encourage us guys to at least take a look at what options staff would come back with. And if we don't like those options, we can always pull that plug. This is not starting a boulder down a hill that we can't reverse.
Okay. Councilman Ford?
I guess just a question then, if it's more form over substance, then what's the purpose in doing it? If they're not going to have veto power and they're not going to have anything, but they're going to be the same thing as council, what is exactly different? How would the residents of town of Castle Rock benefit by having it go to an election for a mayor versus the way that it's selected now? I don't understand what we would gain by going down this path. And maybe you could help articulate what I'm missing.
Oh, you bet, Brad. I mean, I would like to, could be the messenger on this one, because what I hear is, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with this example, but I hear that by structure, we don't have a single one of us who, by the way we have structured our town council, are required to represent the town as a whole. Now, you and I talked about this, Renee, and I think you and I both agreed that we are on committees outside of the town where, no, we do represent the town. Mr. Mayor, you do represent us to the Denver Metro Mayors Conference. So I don't know that I wholeheartedly get behind that argument, yet at the same token, the fact that it does keep coming up, and it does have a preponderance of evidence that people feel that structurally it won't make any difference if they come to talk to me if they live in the Meadows. Now, I don't think that's the case. I will happily work with the mayor. I'll happily work with our mayor pro tem to take a concern from the Meadows to this level. But at the same token, I think there's a desire among the populace of our town to have somebody who, regardless of where they live, one person that they know they can go to and they can say, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, this is my issue. I know you're not from my neighborhood, but this is a big issue. It affects the whole town. So that's kind of the nature of where I'm coming from, Brett. Please understand, I'm not sure I wholeheartedly latch on to that logic just because I am up here. I hear the discussions we have all the time. But I think it's a prevalent feeling among our citizens we represent.
If I could, Mayor. I'll just clarify. I've been asked 3 times since I've been on council, since April, and 2 of those were my children. So I don't know how prevalent it is in my district, how many people have really asked it, and when they have and I explain it and they understand, I know I represent District 7. I also know I represent the town of Castle Rock. Mm-hmm. So if anybody asks me from anywhere, even outside of Castle Rock, I don't tell them they need to contact somebody else. So I see this as an exercise that's futile with form without substance, that I don't know what we're really going to accomplish by going there. So anyway, I think I've already stated my position. I have zero interest in it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else at this time? What I would just add to it is, since I've been on council, Chip and I have been on council the longest here, about 6.5 years, and this comes up periodically, and not from a point where people want to change it, or not from a point where people just kind of ask, hey, why don't we? And we talk about us growing, right? And so, as I look at it, and I really don't have a dog in the fight because I'm termed out here in a year and a half, but when I become a resident of Castle Rock, I like the fact that the mayor pro tem, or any council person has the same authority and the same right to bring issues to the forefront. They have the same authority to bring it up, just like you did here, and we talk about it. And then what happens is, we either have consensus or, like you do, we have a motion. And if you can convince 3 other council members to go along with you on anything, then it can move forward. And I like the mayor being constrained in that regard, where I can't just, by myself or from executive fiat, bring something forward or cause something to change without having the majority of council. And so I think it makes sense, from my point of view, and like Brett had alluded to earlier, when we look nationally and we see politicians that, have too much authority, I think we've got a nice, balanced council here in terms of that. And, so I don't necessarily see a reason to move forward on that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I said, 6.5 years on council, and I don't recall anybody coming up to me and saying, hey, this is a problem. So I don't think it's as big an issue as you're making it out to be, George, but it might be in your district. I mean, there might be a lot of people that are involved in your district there, but I think we've got a lot of other priorities that we can be focusing on, that we should be focusing on here. We got a lot of good things happening in town, And I don't necessarily think that this is one that needs to move forward. So